Hello and welcome to my backyard. Now that winter's kind of going out the door and we're getting to have beautiful spring weather, I thought it would be fun to make a homemade bird feeder. Now we've seen these where you put peanut butter and birdseed on pine cones. We're going to do that. And I think almost everyone knows the steps to make it, but we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to actually design a wreath or some type of design using multiple ones tied together. And I'm going to show you how and some tips and tricks that will help make your peanut butter pine cone bird feeders a lot easier to make. So let's get started. So first we're just going to pick some pine cones. Here in Arizona, we have a lot of pine trees, and so you can even just go to local parks and pick the pine cones that have fallen from the trees. I typically would recommend trying to find ones that are whole, that aren't crushed, or that are full like this. I would also pick different sizes like this.
I pick a pine cone. It's my pine cone.
So instead of just doing a single pine cone, we're actually going to make a design so you can even make a long and string several pine cones together in a row, and then hang it. I suggest if you decide to do a single pine cone bird feeder or a group of pine cones tied together, that you tie them first with string before you spread the peanut butter and birdseed around. When you tie the string to the pine cones, it is going to be tricky. I would be firm but also gentle so that you don't break off the petals of the pine cone. Also, another tip is to zigzag your string around the pine cone and the different layers in case one of the pine cone petals breaks, that your string is still secure to the pine cone. Also, when tying the string to the pine cone, double knot. And if you are tying multiple pine cones together, try to take out as much of the slack of the string as possible. You want the strings to be securely fastened to each pine cone so that they stay together, especially if you're tying them into a group such as this. When tying pine cones to the string, I would cut a significant length of the string so you have plenty of length to tie at least 2 pine cones together. Having it too long or too short will make it difficult to tie double knots and secure them properly. One last tip when tying string to the pine cones. It would be helpful to feed the string through the center of the pine cone, as deep into the pine cone as possible, through the layers of petals. Not just zigzag, but kind of feed it, and you might need to use a plastic knife or fork to help get that string in between the layers of the pine cone where it's really tight. So at the start of this video, I had in mind that it would be cool to kind of make a circle or a wreath-like shape, but that wasn't working. So what I would suggest is stringing, attaching 2 or 3 in a row together.
And you can even just do
like this,
and hang
before
it like this, and that would be
buttering the
fun
peanut butter and bird
do.
seed on, or adding more pine cones and just make it a large group of pine cones. As you finish attaching the number of pine cones you would like to have, make sure you leave a long enough string where you will loop it to hang it onto a tree branch or a hook in your patio. Just a small note that the next steps are pretty messy, so make sure you're prepared by covering tables and floors inside, or even doing this activity outside. Also have some type of towel to wipe your hands off occasionally too. I would recommend getting just creamy, not the chunky type peanut butter. This will help butter in the peanut butter easier. Don't worry about being neat when you spread the peanut butter around the pine cones. All you really want to do is make sure it's coated, because the peanut butter is going to act like glue and hold the birdseed onto the pine cones. Tip 9, make sure you spread on the individual petals as well, in kind of inside the pine cone as well. That will also help secure the birdseed to stick to the pine cones. If you're someone that doesn't mind getting your hands dirty, you can toss the knives or the spatula that you were using and just use your fingers to really spread an even coat of peanut butter around the pine cones. As you've noticed, my son got really involved in helping make these bird feeders. So don't be afraid to ask your grandkids to join you in creating these bird feeders and have a fun activity doing it together. Tip 11. When pouring the birdseed onto the pine cones, make sure that the peanut buttered pine cones are on a tray, and put your birdseed in a bowl or plate. If you're doing multiple pine cones tied together like so, then I would put them on a big tray and then sprinkle the birdseed with a big spoon like this.
I want to do it.
But if you're doing one,
I want to do it.
okay. If you're doing one, then you can just take that pine cone and roll it into the bowl or plate of birdseed. You can even dive in and sprinkle it with your hands, just like my little boy is. The wreath didn't really work out, and that's okay. It is now a group of pine cones, so that there's lots of different places that birds can eat, and now it's just time to find a place to hang it. Where should we hang it, Sim?
To the wall.
On the wall right there? Okay, so there's our little not so good of a wreath shape, but you know what? My whole point of making a wreath was to have a larger area for the birdseed instead of just one. And so I think my intent and the purpose of making a reshape was successful, because now lots of birds can come and enjoy this bird feeder. Now you don't have to do one that this large. You can just do one and just like a single one like this and tie individuals off, or one or two.
I want to drink some water.
So just hang it on your underneath the tree and enjoy the birds as they come and feed on your new bird feeder.